all things New Orleans Saints. This is Who Dat Discussion.
Who dat? Who dat? Who dat? Who dat? Who dat? Say they gon' be them same.
Powered by Overtime Media.
What is up, Who Dat Nation? Welcome into another special free agent frenzy episode here at the Who Dat Discussion. As always, I'm your host, Andrew Galata. You could follow me on Twitter at Andrew Galata, and then also you can follow the podcast on Twitter at the Who Dat Dis. And these last 2 days have just been so eventful, especially at the quarterback position for the Saints. Drew Brees officially retires for the Saints, and we're just gonna, basically jump into that first. Thank you, Drew. I mean, he's just, one of the GOATs. I mean, there's really no other way you can put it, and I wouldn't be speaking to you right now if it wasn't for Drew Brees. He was definitely the first thing that, from a kid from New York, made me a Saints fan, made me intrigued about the Saints, and I bet a lot of other people can say that wherever you're from. I mean, he made the Saints relevant, he helped make the Saints relevant, and we'll go into all of that, but that's kind of going to be our first story about Drew Brees and just how important he was here to the Saints and the Saints franchise in New Orleans. And again, it's one of those days where you look back on all the great Drew Brees moments. You're sad that he'll never take the field as an NFL Saints QB again. And then you look ahead because on Monday, the Saints, kind of just a few hours ago, the Saints signed Jameis Winston, who was on the roster last year, as I think everybody knows. It's a one-year deal. The base is $5.5 million, and it works its way up in incentives to about $12 million if, let's say, he has this huge season, but that's not guaranteed, and that incentive stuff will be pushed ahead to next season's cap. So you're definitely looking at a $5.5 million cap hit for the Saints, which is very, very important considering their cap situation, and that cap is lower than what I thought it would be. And the contract overall is kind of what I thought it was going to be. That one-year deal, that 10 to 12 million, as I said, and I think it's going to be ended up below. I mean, I'm assuming the incentives are going to be just, maybe an MVP, or it's going to be probably yards. And I bet he won't hit all of them. I bet he hits some, but I don't think he hits all of them. So I think it will be ending up around 10 million when this is all said and done, which is kind of what I've been predicting the whole time. And it was one of the things with Jameis. It was one of the first things that, one of the takes that I had with just the $10 million for 1 year, there was some pushback about, which was kind of interesting to go through for sure. But we'll get into all of that, and definitely an interesting deal. I think it's good for both sides. I mean, as I've said multiple times, it gives the Saints just basically the cap security where they don't have to now give a quarterback $30 million, especially because you're paying Taysom Hill, which we'll get into, Jameis Winston, and Drew Brees, who's retiring. So, I mean, the Saints get, the less money and this 1 year deal, and they get to see Winston in that starting role, either in preseason, training camp, or during the season. And then for Winston, he has a chance to win the starting role here in New Orleans, have a big year, and then parlay that into money. It makes perfect sense. And just in my mind, I don't think Winston did enough up until this point to make that Teddy Bridgewater money or more. And it seems like the Saints felt that way. It seems like the rest of the league felt that way, which is why he's coming back here to the Saints. And then also yesterday with Taysom Hill, he restructured his contract, saved the Saints a lot of money on the cap, which was obviously great. It was that voidable 4 years, $140 million that sent the national media into a frenzy. But overall, it saves the Saints money, saves them a lot of money, which is always good stuff. And, right now where the Saints are sitting, they're basically going to be under the cap. Obviously, this Winston move is going to change a few things, and we're going to have to see how that deal all works out. But right now, you're really sitting, if you're the Saints, going to be right around that cap number already. All you need is to basically restructure Terron Armstead and then extend guys if you wanted to, which, extend a guy like Marcus Williams, extend a guy like Ryan Ramczyk, extend a guy like Marshawn Lattimore. I do think they're going to do these moves, and that's what's going to give them moves to make in free agency. You had Mickey Loomis say that they're not going to be big players in free agency, and that's kind of what we've expected up until this point. Even in my free agent preview, a lot of short names, me and Tristan Edgerton. If you haven't watched that episode, definitely do that because it was great talking with Tristan. But, we were talking about guys that are going to be more role players, depth players, Rashad Perriman, Alex Okafor, maybe a guy like Josh Norman can step in on the right cap hit. But that's kind of what free agents the Saints will look at. And so it's going to be a lot of extending guys, re-signing guys. We've already seen that. The tag of Marcus Williams, the re-signing of Jameis Winston. The Saints are going to try their best to retain their team that just won the NFC South and have won it for 4 straight years. So, again, you want to plug holes with veterans for sure. You'll do that in the draft too, but that's just kind of what the Saints are looking at right now. And then 2 more little pieces of news that we'll get into. One with Trey Hendrickson, there. He was signed by the Cincinnati Bengals, 4 years, $60 million. That's a big contract. Kind of maybe a little above what I thought he was going to get, but still right in that 4 to 5 years, $50 to $60 million. Definitely on that upper level of that range, but still right in there, which, again, is good for him. Let him get that money. I mean, we were talking about earlier in this offseason, we were talking about Marcus Williams or Trey Hendrickson. Saints to choose Marcus Williams. I agree with that move. So, again, it stinks that the Saints can't re-sign Trey Hendrickson. That opens up that hole for Marcus Davenport to kind of get into and fill, but he's been uneasy, as we know, over the last few years. But that's going to be another role here that the Saints will have to fill. And then finally, they did re-sign James Hurst, the offensive lineman, 3 years, $9 million. I love this move. Love for him to be that 6-man, or maybe he'll team up with someone else to be a 6-man. 3 years, $9 million. You could spread out that cap hit, and I think he's a guy you want here for multiple years because that depth that he's bringing. So great deal for the Saints, nice team-friendly deal. And Hurst, he also, he gets some years now. He gets 3 years with the same team, which is obviously really great for him as well. So those are the topics we are going to get into here. And let's start off here with Drew Brees. And just to start it off, thank you, Drew Brees, because he's obviously just been amazing for the Saints for 15 years. I don't have to say that. Such a big impact for this team. And look, as I said, I wouldn't be talking to you guys if it wasn't for Drew Brees. I started out being a Saints fan because my first year of playing fantasy football, I basically, not randomly, but I knew Drew Brees was pretty good. He was high in the rankings. I was like, oh, Drew Brees, and he was my quarterback. And that was the year he just went off in fantasy. And then I just fell in love with the team. I had NFL Sunday Ticket, fortunately, because my brother and dad are Dolphins fans, so I still got to watch every game because they were watching the Dolphins game on Sunday Ticket. So I just turn on Saints games and see Drew Brees just throwing it down the field. The Saints offense scored a ton of points, and that really just enamored me to that team and him, and just the way he carried himself as a leader too. All the pump ups as such a young kid, you're really intrigued by that. And then just the next year, or 2 years after, they win the Super Bowl. And, when you're early on in your fandom and you see your team win the Super Bowl, it's like, I'm hooked. And that's exactly what happened. And it's all because of Drew Brees and Sean Payton for sure. And again, that's something that, for a kid to have, an athlete to look up to like Drew Brees, it's definitely made a big impact on me, as I know it did a lot of other Saints fans. And he's a guy that goes beyond the stat book. The way he carried himself was just amazing. I mean, it's really next to none. I mean, the work he did in the community, the work he did with his team, the way he was just so competitive and the way he strived towards his goals, everybody was talking about that. Michael Thomas had that amazing 906-word essay, that's what I'm going to call it, about Drew Brees, and that was the biggest thing, motivation, and that's what he does. And to bring that to a young kid like me, going into the office at 6 a.m. like he did, all that stuff. I mean, it really, it puts a mark on you, and it presses a mark on you as a young person. And that's obviously just something that, not every kid has an athlete to look up to like that on their favorite team. It just doesn't always happen that way. And that's why I just feel blessed to watch the Saints during Drew Brees' prime and during Drew Brees' career, because he was just next to none. I mean, he really was. The way he was putting up those yards. I know Brady's going to go down as the better quarterback, but the way Brees was putting up those stats, Brady wasn't even doing that. So obviously those offenses were just so good. And that had a lot to do with him putting in all of the work. And you look what he said, what Michael Thomas said, how he wanted to win just as much as me. And we know how competitive Michael Thomas is. And Drew Brees, he was the one guy that met me, and he knew exactly what I was talking about, and he pressed me to be better. And that essay was just, it brought tears to my eyes because it was just that, it was that moving. And that's what Brees did, bringing that motivation, being better. The big thing with the Saints is 1% better every day. And he definitely brought that. He tried to be about 100% every day. That's just the kind of person that he is. And, he's a guy that really revitalized his franchise. Before he came, and a lot of people talk, he only got 1 Super Bowl. That's all his naysayers say. He didn't win one in the last 4 years. The noodle arm, talk about all that. Before he came to the Saints and Brees came to the Saints had 1 playoff win in their franchise history. They were the lovable losers, and they were never, really taken seriously.
Brees goes in there. He wins a playoff game in his first year, ends up winning 9 with the team. That's how you turn around a franchise. You win a ton of regular season games. But to say that he didn't have postseason success, he had over 500 record in the postseason, which is impressive. And to just bring a franchise that was nothing and then into something big, him and Sean Payton, that's something that you always have to be proud of. Because even the Patriots, I know they didn't win a Super Bowl before Tom Brady, but those teams made Super Bowls. They were a franchise, a good franchise already. Wasn't that way with the Saints. It really wasn't. They were just losers, lovable losers, but still losers. And one playoff win, not many winning seasons. Brees comes up here and completely changes the culture around and says that the Saints are meant to be reckoned with, and we can win any game with this offense. And he exactly did that. Him and Sean Payton, Mickey and Loomis, everyone. You got to give it to them because they did that. And, with New Orleans and Brees meeting together, basically, I would say at the lowest points of both the city after Hurricane Katrina and then Brees after his shoulder injury. I mean, they both worked their way up, rised up, and then it was a great symbol for the city. I mean, the whole football team was just a great symbol for the city rebuilding, and obviously gave hope. And obviously the city did it itself and rebuilt, amazingly by itself. But the football team's the heart of that city. I mean, when I was down there for the Brees, when he broke the yards record, you just saw. I mean, the city loves him. The city loves the team. I mean, that's like the only city that I've been to where they just have one team and they just love it. Love the Saints. I mean, there were Saints jerseys, not just on Sunday, any day of the week. But, I mean, that's what Brees did. And, again, it was kind of just that symbol of the city rebuilding. He was rebuilding. The team was rebuilding. And that definitely is a big part to what he was, what he did, the team did, his legacy. And, I mean, it goes beyond the Super Bowl. It goes beyond that one Super Bowl, which was like the triumphant moment, definitely, of his time with the Saints. But the records, everything put together, the way he carried himself. I mean, he's really just one of the GOATs. To me, he's a top 5 QB of all time. And, again, a lot of people are going to be like, he's not top 5. You even heard it today in Brees. No one should say anything bad about Brees today. You even heard Max Kellerman say he's not top 5. He's top 5, and he could even be higher. And, he beat Peyton Manning in the Super Bowl, an amazing Super Bowl run where he beat Brett Favre and Kurt Warner, 2 Hall of Famers. I mean, you look at all the yards record, he's number 1 in all of them. And what makes it so great about that, I know he played 20 years, but really 5 of those years, they weren't the best with the Chargers. He really did most of that in 15 years. To think of that, that's just crazy. And a lot of people say, it's a pass-happy league. Well, he was number 1 in all that. So you got to give him credit there. And, with Brees, he's just truly one of the best and one of the GOATs. And, for a young football fan, you just knew that you were in the game anytime, even how bad those defenses were. And, there was a good tweet. I forgot who tweeted it out. But they said, basically the total defenses by points that all these quarterbacks had. Brees was 23rd. Brady was 1. Peyton was in the top 10. So was Rodgers, and Brees was 23rd, so much lower. And he still was able to win. And he gave you a chance to win. And you can't say that with every quarterback, that every game he gave you a chance to win. Even at the end of his career in those last 4 years, I mean, one of his best comebacks was that game against now the Washington football team, where he comes back from 14 points or 15, I think it was 15 points with 5 minutes to go. Just insane stuff. I mean, it's really insane. And how he revolutionized his career by when his arm was starting to deteriorate, still being able to put up amazing stats with his brain, and what Sean Payton was doing with the playbook, how they were always on the same page. And I forgot who said it, but there was a quote that said, Brees said, well, if someone chopped off my right arm, it would take me a while, but I'd start to throw with my left, and I'd do it at the best I could. And that you can even parallel those two things, where he still had a deteriorating arm and still was able to be really successful. Even in his worst year this year, he was still really good and still had a lot of great moments. And, for the Saints, now they're going to have to move forward. And, with Brees, with all these amazing stats, I'm just going to pull them up real quick because, I mean, some of these are just amazing. I mean, you look at the 5,000 yards. I mean, he threw 5,000 yards 5 times. No one else has done it more than once. And before he threw his first 5,000-yard season, before he came to New Orleans, only one person ever threw for 5,000 yards. That was Dan Marino. And obviously the Saints will have another 5,000-yard passer on their roster next year with Jameis Winston, but not to the same level as Brees. I think we all know that. And you just look at it, what he was able to do. He led the league in passing yards 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. That's just insane. Led the league in touchdowns 4 times. I mean, completion percentage 6 times. He was just one of the all-time greats. And that's when you're looking at this, he really just every game put up these amazing stats. And again, he's a guy that I know at his peak, maybe threw a lot of interceptions. And, you look at it, had one or two really bad years in interceptions. Besides that, I mean, especially you could see it go down late in his career. He became a different quarterback. He was able to, even in 2017, 2018, have MVP-type seasons. 2018, he finished second in MVP. And people were talking about his noodle arm back then. And he still was putting up an MVP-level season. Again, that just shows you how great Drew Brees is. And obviously, his legacy goes beyond the stat book. And, it goes to the type of person he was, the type of leader that he was, and just everyone's been saying it. I mean, when you see like the Falcons tweeting out, congratulations, thank you, Drew, the legacy that he had. Again, he's one of those guys that is just one of the GOATs. He just is. And obviously, he's not going to be in that conversation with Brady for the best. But he's right under him, right under there. I mean, you really could put a nice argument in there, probably below Montana, right at 3. You can make an argument for it. I'd say he's 5 solidified, but you can make an argument that he's better than Peyton. I know Peyton has the MVPs, but Brees has all the stats. And Brees beat him in the Super Bowl, which could trump all of it. But again, that's definitely a discussion for another day. I bet we'll get into that. But I definitely just wanted to say thank you, Drew. Thank you for being the best quarterback that any young kid can ask for. I mean, the way he, thank you for building this team and, definitely giving me the motivation to even start the podcast, be a fan, be a really, dedicated fan. It's all because of Brees, that offense. And then the defense, obviously, like, once you start loving the team, you love the defense too, and that's what happened. That's definitely how I became a fan. But, I mean, he was the guy, he was the, the drum, the beating drum to that team, the beating heart to that team, and all these teams that he was on over these last 15 years. And it is sad to see him not play another game with the Saints. It was sad to see him go out the way he did against the Buccaneers, how the 3 interceptions, one of his worst games in a really long time. But for him, that's, it's tough, but he had such a great career, and no one can take that away from him. No one can take away his top 5 status, and no one can take away the type of character he had, the type of motivation. I mean, everyone was going out and saying it, so this is nothing new coming from me, but just kind of from a different point of view that I have from someone that became a Saints fan that wasn't from New Orleans, wasn't from even the Gulf Coast region or the South, someone from New York, and then, becoming a fan, just starting off just because of Drew Brees and then building around. That just shows you, the type of player he was, that, he definitely built incitement every single Sunday, which is just insane. Even if there were bad defenses, even if, the bounty gate and that stuff, even when everything was put against him, he somehow made every game like you could feel like you can win. That's just the way he was. So that is going to wrap up our Thank You, Drew talk. We'll continue it throughout the offseason. And like how he said, he's not leaving. We're not done talking about him. Probably when it's the offseason, not much to talk about. We'll talk about those conversations. But right now, you talk about the character. You talk about how he led the Saints for 15 years. You talk about the amazing stats. You talk about how he's a top 5, one of those GOATs for sure. And talk about how he brought a Super Bowl to New Orleans, brought a lot of playoff wins to New Orleans, made it the franchise that a lot of people respect. And, even you see people in the franchise, they just know that, before Brees was here, not a lot of respect. Since Brees has been here, everybody respects them. You have players from the draft thinking, I want to be drafted by the Saints. Couldn't always say that. And that's, between Drew Brees, Sean Payton, the front office, obviously a lot of players that have been in there that they've acquired over the years to build around Drew Brees. It's really all been because of them. So, again, thank you, Drew. Thank you for, becoming a Saint, making me a Saints fan. Wouldn't be talked to. Thank you for helping, obviously, with the Who Dat discussion. It wouldn't have made the Who Dat discussion if it wasn't for you, Drew. So, thank you so much. And now we got to move on to what's going to be after Drew Brees. And that's when you get into the Jameis Winston conversation. And we're going to get into all of that. A lot of moves went down today. What is next for the Saints? One era closes, but now another book is open. Another chapter is going to be written here. Jameis Winston, Taysom Hill. We're going to get into all of it after this short break. You are listening to the Who Dat Discussion Podcast. Welcome back into the Who Dat Discussion.
And now we're going to get into the news of Jameis Winston re-signing with the Saints. 1 year, up to $12 million, 5.5 base salary for him, and the rest would be earned in incentives. And again, this is a very good deal, I think, for both sides, because it gives Winston the flexibility to now go back in the market. Let's say he goes with the Saints and he has a big year and he ends up being the starter. They win a lot of games. He'd get this huge contract next year. I think we all know that he'd go out and then get that big contract, maybe the 4 years, $140 million that Taysom Hill gets the void contract. I think maybe that would happen for him. So it gives him that flexibility to re-enter the market. Now this time he can re-enter as a starter, very similar to the Teddy Bridgewater situation. I think we can all say that. And for the Saints, it's definitely a lower deal to kind of have now a tryout with Jameis Winston to see if he's the guy. Same thing with really Taysom Hill at this point, but it's going to be very interesting to see what happens there. I like the move. I mean, you can't really not like the move. I mean, I've been saying this all along. Get him on that 1 year, 10 to 12 million. This ends up being 5.5 base and then incentives the rest of the way. And really, when you look at those incentives, I'd say he'd get to around 10. I don't think he'll make it all the way to 12. Maybe he will. But I'd say probably around 10 million it's going to end up being at the end of the day when all the incentives are set and done. And the Saints will have to pay it next year. But when everything's said and done, I believe 1 year, 10 million. And that's kind of right what I thought the whole entire offseason. I know a lot of people were coming, they didn't agree with me. They thought that he'd get a big contract. He'd get 20 million a year. Just, it didn't seem that way. It really didn't. And at the end of the day, it works out with this 1 year, 5.5 million with the incentives to bring it up to 12 million. So that's just kind of how I saw it. I put out an article on Saints News Network, how basically I created a projection model with one of my friends, and a great time making that model. It was really interesting to look at QB history and kind of see which deals worked out, which deals didn't, which deals were values, which deals didn't work out and probably shouldn't have worked out and teams should have saw it. Hindsight's 2020, but it was really fun making that model. And then I put Jameis Winston in there. It went by cap percentage, and his cap percentage was 4.86 million, I believe, or 4.86%, excuse me, 4.86%. And if you convert that into, the salary caps, basically I did an average between last year's and this year's, and it came to around 9 to 10 million. That's where, 8 to 10 million, right in that range. And wrote an article, put it out, and a lot of people are saying, oh, he's going to get 20 million. He's not going to get 1 year, all that stuff. And ends up he's going to be right around there. And it just seems like Winston, even though he's had the starting experience and, started a ton of games for Tampa Bay, it almost felt like the same situation as Teddy Bridgewater, because he was coming in a little broken into New Orleans after the 30 interception season. And then he kind of takes the year to sit behind Brees, just like Teddy Bridgewater did, go to I think Winston called it Harvard for QBs. So again, you sit behind that, and then next year you can go out and prove yourself. Bridgewater did, and now we'll see if Winston can. And this is exactly what I wanted to do for the Saints this offseason. We knew this roster was going to get a bit worse, and it did so far. Definitely, we're not going to say how this roster is the same as last year. It's not. So it's gotten worse, and I was like, then we can see what Jameis Winston can do. Because if he gets you to 10 wins, gets you to 11 wins, you're feeling pretty solid. Because I think if you knew that Jameis was, if you get him 11 wins, you get this roster ready to win again, and you get it ready to be a Super Bowl contender. And it's kind of similar to the 2017. Going in, they were like, well, this team's good, that's obviously good, and we can build this final run for Drew Brees. And that's what they did. The team won 11 games. They were close to a Super Bowl then, for sure. But they had holes. I mean, they had the hole at linebacker. They didn't have Demario Davis at that point. You had a hole at cornerback. You had Ken Crawley back there as your second corner who played well. But as we saw, it definitely wasn't that long-term guy at cornerback. And same with wide receiver, too. You had Ted Ginn, but then the year after, he kind of fell off because of injuries and stuff like that. So the holes were there, and then they kept filling them. The team got better and better and better. So they can do the similar thing here. And that's why I really compare this 2021 season to the 2017 season. Just to me, very, very similar. Just between the two parallels and the two teams. And now we'll see where the Saints hold. Is it going to be a sink or swim? And I think that's what that 2017 season was. It was a sink or swim season. Same type of thing for the Saints. So it'll be interesting to see how that all works out. But, and then, this move with Jameis kind of, definitely proves that they're kind of in that situation that if it's all great, then we could re-sign him, give him that long-term deal, but we're not there yet. Same with 2017. Really felt like that.
and it'll be interesting to see what happens. I do think that Winston with Sean Payton could kind of change his game a little bit. You still want those deep throws in there. You still want those great throws, but you just want to take out the interceptions. And I think he was on the Michael Vick podcast, and he said that the biggest thing I learned with the Saints was I don't have to, have the home run ball every single play. I don't have to win the game every play. I could hit the checkdowns. I could do that stuff. That is so, so important. When I heard that interview with Michael Vick, I was like, he sounds like a changed guy. Sounds like a changed player. And I would love to see that for him. And he's a guy that, again, it's going to be him and Hill, and they're going to battle it out. But if he shows that he improved, he has the talent to be, I think, better than Taysom Hill. I think he has the talent to go out and win a Super Bowl if he's polished. I really do believe that. And now, will it come true? We don't know. And that's why I said a while back, I want to see it. I want to see if he has it or not. I think he's proved that he should deserve one more chance to see if he has it or not. And I definitely want to see him, but I didn't want to see him on $25 million. Didn't want to see him on $20 million. $10 million, we're good. $12 million, we're good. The 5.5 incentive, good. That's all really great. Now you get to see what happens with the Saints. And as it's really this tryout year for either Winston or Hill, and I just can't wait to see it. There's going to be so much to talk about. We're not going to dive too much into Jameis Winston right now, as definitely we have still a little more news to get to. That's definitely for future offseason podcasts, but we will, and it's going to be interesting to see Jameis, Taysom back and forth for at least a little bit. I do think that Jameis has the upper edge right now, and I believe Juice Wyndham said 60-40, and I think that's around true. I do think that Ross Jackson said the same thing, like 60-40, and those guys, I completely agree with them. I'd say 60-40 right now is really good. Jameis Winston has the edge just because he's the starting experience, he's the arm talent, all that stuff. But you could see if Taysom really got better, he could definitely get the starting job as well. But that's really, I feel like, where the Saints are. Great deal because, hey, if it works out, you got a really good quarterback here for like $12 million, and then you have your quarterback for the future. Sign him long term, great. We can go to another Super Bowl run here, another Super Bowl window. That would be outstanding, amazing. If it doesn't work out and he doesn't start and he's still throwing the interceptions and you see it in preseason, let's say he never hits those incentives, it's a $5.5 million 1 year thing. You don't have to worry about it then, and then you could try to find elsewhere. Maybe it's Taysom Hill, maybe it's someone else. It's really a win-win deal, and it's a win-win deal for Winston too, because if it's great, then he gets to, at this point, his career is really a win-win, because if he's great, he gets to parlay it into a championship, and, it's only a 1 year thing, so he can go back and, test the market, and maybe a lot of other teams are going to want him, and he could force the Saints higher and higher and higher, and maybe he was trying to do that this year, but didn't have a lot of leverage. Well, if he goes and balls out, he'll have all that leverage, and he can really maximize himself in an open market, where he wouldn't be able to do that if he signed a 2-3 year deal, even for if it was a little more. Maybe it was like $15 million. If he signed it, he still couldn't get the $30 million. So that's just kind of how it works out for Winston. To me, it's a good deal for both sides. And now Winston, he's going to get his chance. He's going to get his chance to start that he definitely wanted after the 30 interception season. Well, now he's going to get a chance. We'll see if he can convert. I do have confidence in him, and I do have confidence in Sean Payton that he knows talent. He knows, obviously he started in Drew Brees. Maybe he's using Jameis Winston, and it'll be interesting if he can now do it again and kind of take, a quarterback that's broken. Brees was broken with, shoulder and, just his play. Same with Winston. We'll see how it all works out. But the Saints, to me, now filled the quarterback position. That's a check off of the offseason list. It was number one, and you could just check it right on off as you now have your quarterbacks. You have Winston, have Hill, and now we can move on from here. And before we kind of sign on out, and get to talking about one other thing with Trey Hendrickson, I do quickly want to talk about Taysom Hill, how he restructured his deal, which to me was so interesting when looking at this deal, because he was just, again, he had that $16 million cap hit, and everyone's like, he can't play for $16 million. He lowers it, and everyone's still complaining because the void contract was 4 years, $140 million. So the national media thought it was a $140 million deal, but it's all not true. It's all voidable. It goes every year, it voids, and it's just to spread Taysom Hill's cap hit so the Saints could get under the salary cap this year, and for him to only have a $7.26 million hit, which is very good. Even if he's a jack of all trades guy, that's a respectable cap hit, and for a starter that only has 4 starts under his belt,
to me, that makes a lot of sense. So that restructuring makes a ton of sense. And supposedly it was 4 years, $140 million, because just in case he goes off, wins the Super Bowl, like that's a framework of the deal that they can just flip the switch on, that, he would basically protect him from the open market. But again, that's a dream scenario, probably won't come into play. So that's just kind of interesting with Hill. Wanted to throw that in there. And he's a guy that's going to battle for this job. Had 4 starts. It was up and down. Won 3 games, though. I mean, that's really important, but it was definitely up and down. And you want to see what you have in Jameis Winston. He probably even has the edge at this point, as I said. But we'll see if Hill got better, if Hill is able to throw on the run better, if he's able to read zone defenses better, run the 2-minute drill, you could definitely see him surpass Jameis. But right now, just when you see 2 players and kind of now evaluating them based off of what we saw already, I give a little edge to Jameis Winston right now, but still enough to garner a competition and a QB battle. I think that's what Mickey Loomis called it. So we'll talk about that, but I do think that the Saints QB position, that void is filled. It's filled with Jameis Winston, Taysom Hill, and we'll see definitely best of luck to both guys to see who wins the QB battle, as Mickey Loomis called it. And I guess to the victor goes the spoils. I guess you got to say, which is it's going to be very interesting talking about these guys to see who has the edge, and it's going to be interesting to see who we want. I think right now I want to see what Jameis Winston has. I want to see him play in a Saints uniform more than just mop up duty or filling in during games. I want to see him with a playbook around him and a game plan around him. I want to see what he can do, because I think he could just be so good with Sean Payton. Obviously, you have to fix things, but I could see him being the future guy. He has the potential to win a Super Bowl. He has it in him. Now you just got to pry it out of him. Now, maybe that's not possible, but we're going to have to see. And you could probably say the same with Taysom Hill, but we already saw him for 4 starts. We already saw him with the game plan around him. We haven't seen Jameis Winston like that. So that's just kind of what my initial thoughts there for the battle. And then finally, it is free agent frenzy, and the Saints did have a free agent leave, and that would be Trey Hendrickson signing a 4-year, $60 million deal with the Bengals. And this is a great deal for him. I think it's a little over what he probably should have gotten, because he only had that 1 good year. But he's a guy that 13.5 sacks, that is a whole lot of sacks. And again, he will bring, again, hopefully for the Bengals, 13.5 sacks again. But to me, he's more going to be more of an 8-sack guy, which is really solid. I mean, if he can be a perennial 8-sack guy, that's a very, very solid player, even for $15 million. And if he can have maybe a few seasons of 12 with those 8, that's really good. And again, he deserves it. When you have 13.5, you deserve to get paid. I thought he should have been like the 11 or 12 range, but he gets the 15. Good for him. He had a really strong market. So again, happy to see the Saints get paid. They'll get a comp pick next year for it. But again, that is really interesting. And again, when you look at the amount of pressures he had, the amount of sacks he had, and only below 600 snaps, really, really impressive. And if teams thinking, even if he doesn't have that same level, if we play him for 1,000 snaps, what is he going to be? It's going to be interesting. But, the down points that he had, sometimes he was not so good against double teams and being that main guy, had some difficulties in the run sometimes as well, but really came on as the Saints starter late in that season, and overall he was just amazing. But when you're looking at a 4-year, $60 million deal, I mean, the bar gets set higher, and he's going to have to fix those things. So it's definitely going to be very interesting there. And just one more piece of news before we wrap up here. The Saints did sign James Hurst to a 3-year, $9 million deal, which I love that deal. Really love that deal for James Hurst. I mean, a guy that will really bring you really nice stuff. Now for 3 years, you could spread out the cap hit. Really, really nice. I like that a lot. And he could be your 6th man. Maybe he'll team up with someone else to be a 6th man, but could play tackle, could play guard. 69.6 PFF grade, really, really solid. Pass block grade was actually really solid this year at 85.5. So that was huge for the Saints, and it'll be important if he's in there, if he can protect, guys like Jameis Winston, Taysom Hill, who's ever in there. That's going to be big, but definitely wanted to add that as well. I bet we'll talk about that more when we recap free agency and talk about the future of the Saints offensive line, but just wanted to add it in here at the end of our free agent frenzy episode. But I think with all that said, it is time to wrap up this podcast. If you like what we're doing here at the Who Dat Discussion, you should definitely follow us on all of our social media accounts. That means on Twitter, you can follow us at the Who Dat Dis, Instagram at Who Dat Discussion, and then also on YouTube, you can follow us or subscribe to us at the Who Dat discussion. All of our podcasts will now be on YouTube. That's really fun. Hit the like button, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And that would be greatly appreciated. You can see me wearing my nice Drew Brees jersey, honoring him with his retirement. So, again, definitely adds a little more, get some more graphics in there just in case anyone wanted to see that side, and definitely adds an extra layer. So I'm definitely happy to have those YouTube episodes out there. So that's really fun. And definitely a really busy episode. Brees, Winston, Hill, Trey Hendrickson, and we'll be back with you tomorrow if there's any Saints news. And we'll definitely get you guys all caught up every day throughout this first week of free agency. But I think with all that said, I want to say thank you guys for listening. Turn it loose, and who dat?